Hello everyone and welcome to a later Saturday stream following up on the speedrun here. Just making sure everything is running, everything is operational. Think so? Yeah. Hopefully we'll also have a little bit of in-game audio as well. Just a bit, trying to tweak my OBS settings a little bit. Yeah, so Saturday stream. We are here checking in and doing a bit of an update post on the speedrun server that is running, which is referred to as White Cheetah in the server list if you've seen it and is a bit confused about what's going on. It is a speedrun event that we do every every so often, I was gonna say, but this is the second time we're properly doing it, so hopefully we can keep doing it every now and then. It is quite taxing, as well as, you know, with all the hours people are just pulling into it to get progression crazily quick. So it is far a bit in between the events, but maybe we could make it to like an annual thing. Last run was in pre 10.0, so that was in 9.6, I think, maybe 9.5, maybe. Been a while ago, so this is the first one that is running with the 10.0 and all the general balance changes that has happened since, as well as the introduction of the new professions and so on. But yeah, unfortunately we don't have a guest with us tonight. We had Toby last night, so if you missed that stream, take a look at it. We showed off some of the painting stuff in the midst of the speedrun discussions. Cool stuff. Purple and yellow is gonna be the main colors anyone visiting a world of Toby's is. Just be prepared for that. But yeah, so back here on the speedrun. So last when we left them off, we had some technical issues with tech tree as well, so it's kind of hard to show off. But they burned through. They were getting cooking, baking up, getting some tier 2 housing. You should invite the coordinator. Yeah, we might be able to sneak in on Discord here later on, perhaps. But yes, they got a whole bunch of basic stuff done. They moved over to mechanics. Mechanics was going pretty quickly. Onboard from there, they got oil drilling unlocked now finally, and looking into electronics and the advanced series professions. They still haven't started industry yet. But we'll take a look a bit on their general resource stockpiles, the quantity of players involved, and we did run into some technical issues as well with the pumps not really playing nicely, and not entirely sure what was causing it, but we are getting through it somehow. Got a bunch of data to analyze after this event as well, with a lot of profiler data as well for performance checkups. So even though it might just be a fun event for a lot of people, we are getting some pretty big valuable data out of it as well to just further improve systematically. So the rainforest that we had is almost completely devastated, at least a large portion of it. You got a little bit of a trek island here, but it is... Talked to Ed a bit earlier today, and they are running into issues where it's just starting to get way too long of a transportation run from the trees delivered back to the processing plant for it. So there's some logistical issues that this scale of tree cutting has. That said, they do have quite a lot of logs and related things on store. So I am surprised to see a lumber house. It's ambitious. I was not expecting them to be spending flax processing on housing. So that's an interesting one. Narc up there with Trey. They're doing some general housing decoration. Getting those points up. Made it for the XP. Yeah, I mean, I'd presume that, but I kind of assumed that with kind of the world limitations and you're not gonna have time to grow stuff, that all the lumber was kind of earmarked for whatever progression research papers and so on, while churning out bricks would be far more easier to do within the time constraints. So that's an interesting site. But yes, we have a lumber house as well as a brick house over there. Williams mentioned lumber was faster to make than bricks. They were also getting eaten up by other crabs. Yeah, generally speaking, it's a bit quirky, but seemingly the flax isn't a limitation for you. I'm sorry. Been got way late last night and just not enough sleep. So I'm feeling the energy burnout here. The water wheels outside to carry mechanical power. I would presume so. It was probably easier to just make everything out of wood at this point. Rather than fiddling around with like mills and so on. So that is the lumber encampment, and I guess there is there bricks coming out of this as well? Is it just like any mixture materials maybe? So we can spy a little bit if we go in here. And if the crafting tables actually want to populate. Don't want to populate. Also, I think the cat can hear me talking and it's like, oh, there's a stream going on. I want to participate. Why? Yeah. That's spinning around. We'll take a look out in this research center. And here we can have a look and see how much they're hollowing out underground as well to keep churning in. Oh, we got a bit of a reinforced concrete spatial thing going on. So this fantastic construction it's a magical piece of art. It's not entirely gonna be able to be done this way in the future. Just it's a bit of a heads up. Toby's working on something specific to kind of as the goal is to enable that you have to have doorways, like doors kind of thing. So that'll be a default setting. Once the stuff he's working on gets done, which we'll reveal sometime later. It'll probably not be 10.3, but there is some stuff going on. Not too bad. About 2 large lumber stockpiles down here that's drained out. So this, I'm presuming, is that whole pit here, especially since it's on the shoreline. I'm presuming that it is mainly to acquire easily accessed and closed limestone for steel production, and turning it into quicklime. And we're also seeing some pretty neatly stacked barrels coming into shape there as well. Speaking of barrels, how is the oil map looking? We want to take a look a little bit on world layers. Yes, I guess we are looking at the general area here that is kind of the highest oil in the nearby region. See some cool little stone deliveries coming in. We're just gonna track it to its destination. As we can see, they're making pretty good use of maritime shipment as well. Huckleberry extract being a surprising shortcoming in advanced upgrade chain. I can imagine so, especially if you need a whole bunch of advanced upgrades very quickly. There's some interesting supply chain breakages potential when you don't have the capacity to let the server just kind of populate on its own. You can hear that huffing around. So this is the export, which makes me... Oh yeah, so this is... Let's get rid of the oil field. So I'm guessing there is a copper demand here. Yeah, so we follow this in the mountain. I'm presuming we've got an extraction going on here to get some copper down. Oh, it's going. We're looking for copper, gold. Not where I would expect people to really grind for it initially, but guessing they have an idea. That whole pit is gonna takes a bit of material and getting some extra stone while grinding this out. Go into the blackness here. Suffering away at the deepest, darkest corners of the world. It's one way chain down the mountain. And then we have the rock guys, and then we have the mechanical stuff. And mechanical stuff is progressing quite nicely. Speed up our little flight back here. Was a little bit too fast. Speaking of, let's take a. Do we have any general? We're looking back on the whole world layer things. Let's have a look and see if the oh, there is still some agave left in the world. We got that secondary desert. Plenty of beans left. Although plenty might be a little bit of an exaggeration. Ooh. Some traces of beets around. And then we got camas in the forest. Let's see how that is. Oh, camas is looking alright. We got mushroom. Got a whole region here. And we got two pretty big splotches over here. Plenty of papaya, but I'm guessing those are picked since they're a repickable thing. Pumpkins. Yeah, rice is not going to be too well off if they start salvaging that. Not a whole lot of sunflower. And then we got taro. Taro, there's plenty of taro roots. Plenty of taro roots. And the whole grassland is basically one big tomato field. There is still quite a bit of food supply left in the world that they can harvest. Mischievous cats rummaging. Oh yeah, that is true, Pondo. It is Star Wars Day today. Always a fun day of the year. Let's see here. Let's pop back up. Do we have? There we go. Let's keep heading up there. Go back to the industry. Go back to the place where all the people are. Chasing down that meteor to destroy it. 2 days, 9 minutes, which means we are coming up on just under 24 hours now. So we've had a total downtime of 30 minutes. My math isn't completely incorrect. We got some huff and puffing going on here in the back with some exhausts Is that the cement kilns going off here? Yeah. Rotating little machinery. But yeah, so the desert seems almost void of stuff, but there are a few cactuses left alive. And here we have some cooking machinery going on here. As you can see, it's quite industrialized in the quantity of stoves and bakery ovens. Campfires still going strong. I can see some mills rotating there as well. And they also took the opportunity to turn it into housing as well, since they're already having kitchen rooms in there. Let's see if we can see the property. So if we grab that food camp, click on it, we can see the property value on it. Yes, we have 23 experience per day, which might not sound a lot, but it does help. Every little bit helps when you're trying to squeeze this out. So yeah, pretty airy construction. You won't be working in food smell, at least. No, it's definitely got proper quantity of air condition going through. Don't have to worry about that for sure. And we have, is that gold I spy? There is some gold ore. What happens if we take a peek down here? I'm presuming that we are gonna find some sort of an ongoing gold mine, or start of a gold mine. Kiwi. Kiwi. Hello Petrusen, welcome to the stream. Hope everything is alright this weekend. If you have suggestions or ideas, just pop in over on the Canny site and drop a suggestion in there. You can also vote on already existing suggestions to help give better traction or visibility to certain things that you might find interesting or feel are missing. Yeah, so on, you know, viewing the general progression of this, a few of the things that we look at is kind of the full scale. So on, want to kind of break it down of like how do we look at data from, say, a speedrun compared and translatable into an actionable regular server that people just kind of casually stroll around and do things progressively. Some of the things that we do look at is general playtime per se. So if we're looking at the speedrun, that tends to be super focused, super optimized, as much as they can within the constraints, to see how much actionable time it takes to go from start to finish, and then spread that out over and looking over the actual hours spent rather than just, hey, it took them 24 hours, clearly something's wrong, we need to, you know, increase the difficulty or add more complexity or so, you know, so on, back and forth. But more of breaking it up to how much time is total accounted for on the entire speedrun. So when you're looking at each individual player and then how much playtime they have on it, which you can also see as a user on your own. If you're an administrator on a server, you can check other people's playtimes, and it gives you better metrics to kind of see how things are looking in actuality. So if you have 10 people spending 10 hours each versus one person spending 100 hours, or 100 people spending, you know, 10 hours, the general progression is the same, but it might be in completely different focuses, or if aimed and targeted for a single purpose, will have the same result. Vad i hela nästan håller de på med? Cat just slammed into the desk. Next speedrun's going to be a seed with monobiome island, boat bonanza. It'd be pretty interesting. But yeah, so it gives us actionable data on how much people are required to spend time to get from start to finish. And then we can adjust levels for the base experience to fit where those breaks are happening in progression kind of gaps. And better analyze how long does it take until they transition into XYZ, which is obviously really, really hard to compare on something like this, because there's also extreme focus to just one cohesive industrial complex per type, rather than a whole bunch of small houses or larger houses all over the place, which with a lot more furniture, infrastructure, roads, and everything else that gets built that absorbs resources, which then gradually expends the general economy, market, and productivity of those players. So instead of having 100% of the resources mined going directly to the end game goal, you might be looking at 25%, 30% on an actual regular live server, and the rest of them is going into utilitarian things like better tools to more people on the server, or more vehicles so everyone has a truck, versus something like this where you might only have 10 trucks rather than 150. So there's a lot of nuance to just looking at the plain output. Let's see, someone is having a blast there. Even cleaning up the stumps. I think Erdy is just showing off right now. Just he's caring for the environment while things are being destroyed. Do do do. Hmm? Oh. Crazy amount of industrial power going on here. We have 7 large lumber stockpiles that eats materials and just kind of churns them around, turning the logs directly into hewn, and mincing it into to lumber. Have a look and see inside here. Whole slew of carpentry tables. And then a bunch of research tables, I'm guessing for the basic and advanced research papers to just flood it. And the same thing here for rocks and pebbles, I guess. This is a research center. Beautiful, with air condition and everything. We got some laboratories here going on as well. And then we have the electrical power, which we are seeing some environmental influences here, where they are less than environmental friendly. Got a combustion generator, and the blast furnaces keep hammering away. We are starting to see some copper and gold stacks coming in. So I wonder if they'll be prepared once they reach industry to just burn through a lot of things. But I believe they're still gonna need... We go into industry. Oh, look at that. Yeah, it has been discovered. So they're just missing electronics, and then they'll be able to start pushing into it. Let's go industry. Oh yeah, so they are, as it is running on the expensive recipe lineup, it requires the computer lab for the laser shoot-it-down controls requires the profession upgrades from the later professions, which means you are gonna have to have a level 7 advanced masonry, composites, electronics, industry. And that is likely to be the big pain points to get up to that level 7 to be able to make that upgrade. As it's a lot of materials to go through it, and I'm presuming that they're really pushing for housing value for those people doing those professions to quickly get as much experience as they can. But yeah, 24 hours, not a go. The question is, how many hours further is it gonna take before they reach it? Is it gonna be 4 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours? And how quickly is it gonna scale up? And is the industrial capacity gonna have enough productions be able to cater to the production volume if they do get like a skid steer excavator up to really burn through materials? And we got some tailoring corners down here. There we got some sawmills. Work safety regulations down here. We're seeing some gold concentrate coming in as well, so you know they are progressing quite nicely. So question for anyone on the speedrun in the chat right now. How much compared to... Can't remember when I did the change. Was it 10.1, 10.2? Does it feel like the metal costs and relations have changed a lot since the last speedrun. Partially to the general geology changes. But as with the blast furnace change and the bloomeries and using basic upgrades versus advanced upgrades, just to get kind of that initial step over. But maybe we'll just, we want to ransack a channel. Just go like, whoa. The Kool-Aid water is real. Yeah, they're starting to properly add some flavor to the water now. All they need now is some carbon dioxide or something to just fizz it up a bit. Looking forward to seeing what that industry plant is gonna look like here in a while when they start really pushing out those crafting tables. Because I know there are a few paint pieces in there that has a little bit more crafting time than the others, and that's usually a big hold up on some of that production. I wonder, do we have, where is that main iron? There we go. Yeah, it's under here. Shoot down the rock, planet be damned. That seems to be the case. So here we have a bit of an excavation going on. Holy moly. It is really squeezing out and using everything all over the place. Yeah, Waylon, that is an excellent question. I flew over there, but I couldn't see any general copper. Okay, there we have a catfish and Mystery Mia chopping away at the iron, and I can see we start to have a good use of that empty space for tailing storage as well, getting rid of it from the surface, just to out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. But it is a pretty substantial excavation here. It keeps going as well, a little bit at least. But yeah, maybe we can figure out where the copper is coming from. That seems like a little bit of a mystery. There's some targeted excavation here going on, which is neat for grabbing the ore, but it also makes it slightly complicated for the logistics of hauling it out. But when every piece of ore counts, you want to get it as much as you can, as quickly as you can. We pull up here. Let's have a look and see. We got some trampling over here, and we also have some effects, but I don't think that there's any mining going on up there. Maybe we fly over there and have a look. Look at this casual little wolf here, having no idea his entire world is collapsing around him. Calmly, he's just nodding off in the desert. But yes, on animals we got some cool stuff being worked on. Stuff is being converted to root motion, and they're looking so much more smoother and so much more realistic, I guess, in a sense. They look less gamey, more natural movement, and a lot of that is client side, rather than having everything kind of hard checked back and forth between the server and client. And there's some weird redwood thing going on here. Oddly satisfying, but still very weird. I guess the large redwoods are the ones that take the fall when the world collapses. Do we have anything more excavated here? No, just a little pit. We have some copper in the side of the mountain here. And then we have Ozymandias way deep below, still chopping away at that pit we saw earlier. And Whaling, this is where I'm presuming some of the copper is coming from, but didn't see any general veins or overall coming through. But it is quickly being excavated. And not just one stockpile or 3 stockpiles. There we go. Oh yeah, so dug down to a certain elevation and then just burrowing straight forward. And look at that. We have gold, boys. We have gold. It's there. It's in the roof. Can all go home now. We're rich. Don't mind the asteroid. And if you don't see Ozzy anymore, he'll have purchased a small little bunker off the coast of the industrial sector and probably living his best life. The doom of the meteor is steadily going on. I just gonna quickly disappear off camera for a second. Just need to refill my coffee. I'll be right back. And we have returned. Not just on... There we go. Shuffling in. Got some more coffee so we can sustain ourselves. Let's see where... Going up on the top there. I think... Do we have... Yeah, Pepsi. 3 people have been on the server for at least 20 hours since the launch. That is quite a bit. I'm not gonna lie. See where and how and where. Seeing those shiny metal bars in the moonlight. All the gold in the world. And as in case we are not murdering the cat in the background, she's just very, very vocal at the moment. Kom då. Ja, kom då. Ja, kom här. Nope. Wanted attention, but don't touch me. It's my conditions. I'm just casually walking around you. Den in kabel där. Hey. Yeah. Trying to trick her, but nope. Not having it. Oh well. Yeah, she's just rummaging around. So they take turns causing ruckuses. They ran them around like crazy just prior to the stream, and trying to just help them dump excess energy, so they'd be fairly exhausted and be sleeping through the stream. But nope. Hopes and dreams. Hopes and dreams and cats. There we go. Have her be somewhat in with here. It helps her, it calms her down a bit, but she is also very, very good at overstimulating herself into crazy agitation. And they just need to sit down for a bit and calm down. Otherwise they'll just kind of scale it up more and more. Du. Du, Krappis. Pushing the microphone away as well. Ska du vara med här? Jaså? Du? You happy now? There we go. Totally not being distracted at all, and it definitely helps controlling the stream when you have a cat that wants attention. It's like, please hold me. Not do anything else. So this is Spark, which is the female. And they are looking very, very, very similar, but they are very cuddly, very cute, but they're also very vocal. There we go. Let's double trouble with cats here, right? Yeah, so we got Spark on one side, and then we have Maui on the other side, which is the male. And they got enough with being on the stream now, so now they got I think they started poking at each other. So we'll see. So those are the two that are just causing absolute ruckus. So no, Maui being the male, they're both from the same, what do you call it? Litter. And they are coming up on 1 year now in 2 weeks, roughly. So they're still counted as kittens for now. And it's definitely felt with the quantity of energy they have across the board. So it's, you know, walking them outside, playing around with them, and just helping them get rid of that excess energy to have a somewhat sane day. But working from home and having those two just rummaging around you can be quite disruptive sometimes, as you can tell from the stream. Speaking of cats, there's a feline on top of the roof there. Jaguar just casually strolling around, not really knowing where it wants to go. There is another thing that's being looked at in terms of animal behaviors. So they're intended to be more retreating when it comes to civilization. And there's a lot of experimentation and investigation into just general AI behaviors and what we can do technically without causing any general performance impact. But yeah, we'll go through that on a separate stream. But there's some pretty cool stuff coming up with new animations and general new pathing. So the animals are looking pretty slick in terms of getting up and down ledges and like jumping down and all kinds of cool things. Have you considered using the trample overlay for guiding where the animals wander? It's been a topic, but at the moment the trample layer in itself is just, it's a bit kind of hard to discern, and the issue kind of boils into getting them to try to avoid it, but at the same time they need to be able to kind of casually cross it. If you have, for example, because they're on a 2D map, if you have like a longer tunnel or a highway or something, you still want the animals to be able to cross over back and forth freely, yet they're still supposed to be avoiding the area. So we don't want to end up in a situation where you are kind of boxing in animals because you have a road around the forest. You still want them to somewhat go back and forth. But I think it's quite doable with just some fine tuning of how much, or some special cases for when to kind of ignore player trampled and so on. So there's definitely some investigation into dealing with it, because it's something that we want, but we'll see in what shape it manifests and how it's going to be looking. But yeah, the general animal view and animal behavior is definitely something that's on a very high interest table, especially looking at animal husbandry later on. Until then, I will enjoy my roof elk, absolutely. But one day the roof elk will be gone, and you will be missing it as much as the slender fox. It will be a sad day to celebrate. No more roof animal. But yeah, forest deforestation seems to be As long as my mine wolf stays. Oh, the mine wolf will probably also disappear. Don't remind me about the slender fox. Too soon. It's not too soon. That thing's been out for... I don't know, it feels like ages. When was the last thing we saw it? A year and a half ago? Maybe? 2 years ago? I wonder if we'll manage to find the Echo statue. Ooh, that'd be interesting. Yeah, was it 10 that finally removed? I thought it was like 9.6 or 9.7. Maybe I'll poke Shard and see if he has. I think he has some images and like some in-game photos of the memorabilia of the Slender Fox. Yeah, there's definitely some deforestation. Well, Hva var det de tog med för någonting? Yeah. Well, as mentioned, they are causing a ruckus. But it went all right. What you all heard there was the ghost of the Slender Fox stirring in the background at the mentioning of their name. The spirit of the Slender Fox possessed the cat. They like to pretend that they're jumpers and just they're climbers, and then Maui the male has gotten an absolute obsession of getting up on top of the coat hanger. Like it has a what is a good English translation for it? Monsoon, help me out. Like a hat rack for the coat hangers. And he wants to get up on it. But he doesn't want to commit to the jump, so he tries to do like a half-hearted jump and half climb. Which then results in him tearing stuff down. And he hasn't really realized that when it's not succeeding the first 30 times, to just give up on it. No, he'll persistently try it until he manages. So we'll see how long that interest is gonna take. Previously, the obsession was a cabinet inside the bathroom, but he gave up on that eventually, and then it resurfaces every now and then. Can we get an in-game repository of official photos and images to use for culture? The marauder in question. Let's just... You stay with me now. Not a happy cat. He is very much, let me go, I want to leave. I want to climb on things. Han sitter där så länge han sitter. And then as soon as you pick him up and she gets a free pass, she starts to make noises. So it is a interesting life as a cat owner for 2 kittens. Han är ju inte imponerad. Du? Inte jag heller. Oh, they're being a bit... causing a bit of ruckus. So... Is the apartmentalization of the lumber rooms done? How much points did we get up to? So let's grab that, the biodome. Property value, let's see here. 71.75 XP per day. That is not bad. We got residency, we've got leaf and majors. If we go here, doesn't have a skill, so I'm intrigued as to who is gonna be picking up and living in the house to burn the XP for whatever profession comes next. But the it's like a default set of cultural images and whatnot. Could be an interesting idea. But things are picking up. They're houses for composites XP. Yeah. I mean, that seems fitting, right? You're making a wooden house to promote. That is a very ruckusy cat. They really don't like me streaming tonight, that's for sure. Or in general, ever, but yeah. Here we are. Seen this, by the way? A little rubber duck in a bathtub. Or ah. It was some sparkly thingy on the shelf. That's why he had an obsession to get up there. Han vill ha det. We also ran into, speaking of the cats, we also ran into an issue of he's starting to figure out how to pull out drawers. And if anyone has a tip that is, you know, not just like child safe the drawers, to get a cat to not try to open them, it would be super appreciated. We've tried aluminum foil, as well as using like a double-sided tape, and anything, and the double-sided tape had an adverse effect because he wants to bite on it. He's like, ooh, this can be chewed on. Delicious glue. So that went out, and yeah, we're at a loss of what to do. He's behaving like a dumpster cat. It's like, ooh, can I eat garbage? Yes, I will eat garbage. We're seeing more and more deforestation. There's not a lot of trees left. Are they gunning for a full continental deprivation of trees? Put a dog in the drawer. I'm not sure if that's gonna alleviate the situation or agitate the situation. That may or may not be the goal. We see a speedy goods transportation going on here. Paddling away. Just add drugs for 4 more XP in the lumber house. Got it to 75. That's pretty neat. Nice going. I'm not going to be touching any sand or clay again for a little while after this. Well, hopefully, hopefully it'll be a little bit alleviated with the steam tractor coming in, or the steam tractor attachment, which is not. It's not going to be able to dig rocks, but it is intended to alleviate a lot of the terraforming, which would also mean, you know, kind of clay accumulation mid-game is going to be a lot easier. As well as sand, obviously, in rummaging around in the desert. It'll hopefully be a way of maybe promote a bit more of a quarry behavior, of like cleaning off the dirt around, cleaning off the sand around, and then just digging straight down, making like open pit mining a possibility. Have you seen the clay pits we have going on? Heavy stuff. I'm not sure. Whereabouts are they? Are they somewhere below in the forest? I'm presuming you are around them. So let's just dive into the ground there and see what we can find. Oh yeah, here we go. Oh boy, yeah. Yeah, this is some good stuff. This is the source of the bricks. The lifeblood of civilization. Oh yeah, no, I can definitely see, especially since you've been going on through a mechanical era so long. You're definitely gonna have an absolute blast with the steam tractor changes. Can pretty much guarantee that. That is a lot of digging. That is a lot of digging in a very short period of time. And I see you're also finding some gold here sporadically. But that is an interesting complication. So, what's the general opinion of falling blocks or general, not necessarily structural integrity per se, but environmental integrity? So say, you know, dirt and sand would fall down as you dig away the supporting structure under it. Because it is a bit sad the way it's looking right now. As you have that environmental effect when you're dealing with rubble and so on, that it does kind of transform a bit around you, but I would personally like to see us introduce something similar to it, as it would mean that you would need to build, I mean, you could probably cheese it through quite quickly, like when you're digging something out, you'd replace it with just a layer of beams or you know, a ceiling coat of mortared stone or something. But especially for natural terrain is my main kind of view on it, is when you dig around and dig away the structural integrity of it, it would collapse on itself or fall down, which would make more open pit mining the natural goal. So as one of the big, I think one of the big irks I have from a design perspective when it comes to material acquisition and terraforming overall is that, like, we've seen, you know, we rummaged around in the ground here, as well now under the clay here, with early pointing out that that thing was happening. Looking at the map, like, you have this massive quantity of resources mined out and done absolutely colossal devastation to everything. However, the top, like the general environment, looks like it's completely untouched. Outside, you know, the devoid life of trees in the rainforest. But all on its general face, there's not a lot of change in the environment. Which from a design perspective on my end, it just feels wrong when the intention is to have bigger environmental impact changes, not just pollution and garbage and things that we have planned with focusing for, but also the general natural deformation of terrain. So as you're digging out stuff, you are leaving massive holes. Or when you're converting stuff and you're mining out a large quantity of materials, you're turning it into gravel. Most cases, people tend to just turn it into research papers as a way to sort of destroy material in a sense. Now, some of that is gonna change due to the introduction of catalysts and garbage generation. So you might not want to turn all of that rubble into research paper, because it's just gonna replace the rubble with something worse than rubble. So it would be better to turn the rubble into gravel and then pouring it back out to get rid of it, in a sense of dumping it. So there's some food for thought for you. Logging having to make support beams would be interesting. Yeah, there's a few examples of games that have done it. There are a few mods to other games that have managed to introduce it as a separate thing. And there are more or less complicated ways of doing it, and there's more or less ways of doing it without having a massive kind of detrimental impact on the player, but at the same time filling out a very critical limitation in certain buildings and certain options. Yeah, so we're seeing some separation for the copper and gold now, and guess the assembly line of rocks moving forward is a good indication of things progressing. How is the research looking now? And I managed to break it somehow again. However, I still see tier 4, or most of tier 4 at least. Missing some other stuff. I honestly don't know how I keep breaking it. Which boils into the fun of doing QA and finding repetitive steps to make it solvable. I honestly didn't realize you were here, Catfish, before you mentioned it. There we go. And for anyone that is a bit confused on what's going on, we are running a event server that is doing a speedrun attempt, setting sort of a baseline record for quickest completion, with no real population limit per se, but it'll be mostly counted towards the total quantity of hours for completion. And just keeping tabs on what's going on, how it's going, and chatting a bit about balance and all things eco. So if you have a question, pop it in chat. I'll happily answer as much as I can, to the extent that I can. If you have feedback and suggestions, you can hop in over on, I think Dennis said that it was feedback.play.eco, but you also have the direct canny link up in the top right corner. Where did you hide the echo on this map? I haven't hidden it. It's programmatically generated. Don't blame me for not finding it. It's in the ground somewhere, Waylon. You just have to keep digging out the world. But it's there somewhere. There's still some gold in that stockpile. Now we have some nice looking rain weather coming down here. So this is some of the new ambient effects, and why is it play nice now? Yeah, some of the new ambient effects, that is things that we add on for just adding more depth of field to the game, making sure that we get some effects and some audio and things kind of happening in the background that kind of we want to avoid having dead silence, if you will. There's a few general base rules in game audio or general, like the experienced audio, in a sense, and a lot of times we didn't necessarily just want to have just the music filling up in the background. So some of the things that we wanted to introduce was, you know, weather changes, not necessarily directly having an impact on things, although that is also something that we want to take a look at. But just get more of an ambience feel, so you have a bit of shift in the environment around you visually. And storms, weathers, and kind of visual elements in that regard was quite easy to just go like, hey, this is something we really want. And with that, we got some sound added to it. We tuned the sound levels a lot on feedback based from the playtest. And if you have any general issues regarding sound, be it channeling or pitch or lack of, and so on, just hop in on the bug tracker or pop a message and point it out in the bug testing. And give some feedback on it, because the players are more likely to find things that we might be, what do you call it, like feature blind to, I guess. In Swedish we usually refer to it as arbetsskada, which would be like when you're working on a specific thing for a long time, and you're kind of linearly looking at just this thing, and then so you kind of get you have a hard time seeing the whole picture or certain things that may be adjacent to the feature when you're just doing the one thing. And getting some external eyes on it definitely helps give back the perspective for why we're doing the things we're doing, which definitely it definitely helps us make a better product of Eco, but it also helps us kind of grow as developers as well, and be better at seeing the whole thing and how everything's interacting with each individual part, and it all needs to kind of synergize. And sometimes that just clashes with what if we're working on one explicit thing, and then suddenly that breaks another thing, and kind of end up in an everlasting loop of fixing the wrong things for the right reasons, or fixing the right things for the wrong reasons. Which is why our QA team is amazing at going through that first line of defense, giving us a lot of valuable feedback in if things are fun or if they don't make sense, or if it's way too overboard in certain areas, and then points out the playtest, and we have more average players pop in and give their feel. And especially for an early access title, it's invaluable. Cannot thank the players enough for getting involved in the whole process. So it's an absolute privilege and a blast to be able to just sit down and chat and just do these streams and casually, more of a casual approach to it, instead of just kind of having that PowerPoint presentation 1 to 10 dots. These are the subjects we're going to talk about, and these here and now is when we're discussing XYZ. But just take a more casual tone to it, and just have a better general open discussion for things. Now, granted, when I'm alone and I don't have any co-partner to kind of bounce things in between, I can get a bit rambly, so apologize if I repeat myself too much. Is the garbage burning recipe coming into vanilla in the future? It probably will in some shape or form. We have some specific things in mind for post 10.3. We have the next subsequent update will have a bit of focus towards that area specifically. So I don't want to add a recipe to then completely rework it, or it gets done in a completely different manner in the subsequent update. So not yet, but there will be some version of it coming. Beautiful brick building. And on the topic of being completely blind to things when we are working on specific features, sometimes I can get absolutely lost in so for example, now that we've been working on the painting and everything around it, I come into release and I'm like, why haven't anyone painted this building yet? And then it takes me a few minutes and go like, wait, that's because we haven't released it yet. And that's happened more than once, both in terms of like the food flavor and things that when I've been running kind of private playtests locally, and I just get lost in the content of the next update as working on it, and sometimes forget that certain things hasn't been released yet, or certain things aren't publicized yet. And coming into some of the discussions that we have back and forth in regards to design or balance and so on the Discord as well, sometimes I'm basing feedback to questions or suggestions on something that players wouldn't be able to know, which is not by intent, it's more of an oversight. Since I kind of have a sheet book of what we're working on and what priority these things are happening. An example on that would be the blacksmith, for example, where the blacksmith profession as is might not make a lot of sense outside of it cleaned up a lot of the metalworking pathways and kind of profession scaling. But it'll make so much more sense once we get 10.3 out, because we have a lot of things in relation to item decay and kind of tool decay, which will keep the blacksmiths super occupied. Whereas right now they might seem a little bit hollow. And that's definitely areas that are... I kind of feel bad for doing it in the way we're doing it sometimes, but it's also very hard to avoid those clashes because we have certain timetables internally for release scheduling, as well as kind of what features are going into which update, and then we need, like, we can work on an update indefinitely. There's no doubts about that. Like, we can just make an update, an Omega update, which we saw with 10.0, for example, where the quantity of features and the quantity of content in that update was astronomical compared to some of the minor ones, and you kind of risk running into a slippery slope of feature creep, which is what it's defined as in the industry, where you're working on something and you have a core concept for it, and then you're just kind of, every time you add something or you polish something and you go, you know what, if we just add this little thing, it'll be a lot better. And then once you've added that, you go, well, you know, now that we've added this doesn't really feel correctly, or it doesn't really feel as good as I wanted it to be, or you know what, let's scrap this thing completely and do it this way instead. And each of those decisions can add weeks, if not months of time, depending on the scope of that specific feature. And it is by far, I think, the biggest cause of delays in a lot of things. Either incorrectly estimations for how long these things can take, or the complications that arise from it. Like the painting system had a lot of technical hurdles that we had to pass through, both in terms of the user end of things with the interaction itself. We had so when we add paint buckets for the full RGB scale, we don't want to have a general bloat. We had to have an icon that's dynamically changing based on the color palette that you're having for that, or the kind of the color selection for that paint. Otherwise, you know, we would need 16 million icons in the project just to have one for each shade of color, which is obviously not realistically possible, because that would make the game like 45 gigs just in icons. So we needed to cook up a way where we can have an icon that has two parts to it, with one which is dynamically changed in runtime using the shader for the color, which was something the core system wasn't really capable of supporting. So there was a lot of investigation and testing from Mike to get that sorted and figured out. But in the end, it works really nice. But things like that can sound so easy to do, but be really technically complicated to actually implement. Either due to already existing constraints in world space, or just from the system never had that functionality in mind from the start. But yeah, you know, it's onward, forward, and going quite nicely. Hammering away at 10.3 at a pretty rapid pace. We got a lot of new cool things to show off as well in the next dev stream, which will, as usual, be a bi-weekly thing on... actually, I shouldn't hang on. Let me because I am gonna be so the next dev stream won't be in 2 weeks. I'd completely forgotten to take that into account. So it'll be in 3 weeks on the 24th. Is modern research papers getting reduced by upgrades in the lab on purpose? No. That shouldn't be a case. Let's have a look. Because I could have sworn I went over all the recipes. Huh. Yeah, that shouldn't be a case. Apparently it is a thing. That'll have to be sorted out. Make him quick. Stop the machinery. Stop the machinery. Has the idea of a stamina bar been tossed around at all? Stamina in terms of like sprint speed or swimming restrictions rather than calories, or what are you thinking in regards to a stamina usage, Pondo? Because yeah, in some of those cases it has been considered, but it felt like it really clashes with the general interactions of having like a UI element that pops up and gets removed when doing things, when it's innately not doing it. But yeah, we've talked about it, but it hasn't really been anything more than just kind of discussing the possibilities of how it could work and in what capacity we would look at it. So there's nothing really defined for it. It would give a lot more options for food quality buffs and clothing, etc. Yeah, it's definitely not a bad idea. But it's a question of kind of where it fits in, to what degree it would have an impact. So it's not off the table, I wouldn't say that, but it is currently not on the table, if that makes sense. Thirst as a stamina might make more sense, so you have to think about proximity to water. Yeah, I think it could be an interesting stage to look into. We also have some ideas on just generally change out water, speaking of thirst. But in terms of having different types of liquids be actual liquids and not just an effect in water. So you would potentially have things like oil and so on be an actual liquid rather than, well, it would also be an abstract thing, but also be a liquid, and wet tailings obviously is also intended to be a liquid eventually. And we're also looking at general pollution effects with more general permanent damage to the world, but part of it also be recoverable. For chemical spills and cleanup and oil spills and so on, accidents and whatever else weird crazy things we can cook up. Any plans in regards to reworking the way skill scrolls are created, either removing the books themselves or something more akin to the way they're done on White Tiger? Always struggled with the infinite scrolls being churned out. Sort of, but not really. There are some ideas towards changing out the general research. And how you kind of accumulate research and get on with tech things, but nothing that is solid enough to present. Wet tailings being liquid, like pour them out into the ocean. Yeah. What about making sprint speed a variable so you can adjust / improve it? Barefoot sprint is worse than shoe sprinting. So at the moment, the sprint speed is based on your movement speed, which is changed by footwear. So if you're running barefoot versus if you have shoes on you, you will run faster with shoes on you, which by definition will also make the sprinting with shoes faster than sprinting with bare feet. Yeah, Alpen, that's also the case. So you have the variable exposed, but you have a max value on the client, kind of thing. Yeah, the sprint modifier of the base value is hard capped. Urdu, yeah, and kind of White Tiger is also, it's also, you know, it's got its recipes kind of ramped up the ceiling, and it has the books are costly because the general intention is to, like, each research is its own kind of miniature gate. Does movement speed affect boat speed? No. The vehicle speed is set on the vehicles themselves, so they're separate. There's a sad little contract board. Got a few things on it. It's like, hey, come help me. Yeah, here we go. Interesting. There's been rumors that it affects both, but never tested it. No, it shouldn't. They don't really have anything to do with each other, as the vehicle speed is separate, set on the actual vehicle prefab itself. It's completely deforested. But as people have been clearing off the stumps, I guess we are seeing some trees pop back into action here. The food production is slowly getting taller and taller. We've got some more cast iron stoves, and we also have the new addition of kitchens here. The masonry place is a very sad production line at the moment. We see some reinforced concrete churned out. The trees ever die naturally? Not at the moment. Excessive pollution generally tends to lead to temperature rise, and the temperature rise is what kills the trees. Um, but by themselves, like of old age, etc. No, um, not at the moment, at least. Um, we have some ideas for general like plant wilting and having a proper life cycle for the plants and crops and everything. But that is going to be a kind of a bigger project to tackle in a later update. Seasons. I started poking at seasons out of a from a design side of things, like how seasons would work if we could do it. What the general gameplay effects would be, how much general effort it would be for adding like seasonal effects on assets as a blank canvas kind of replacement thing, like changing out the shades of all the plant life basically, and adding effects to things up and down, and kind of seeing where the labor scales are for these things. And seasons would definitely be plausible in certain styles and scopes, but it would probably be more in line of like summer/springs being more fertile versus autumn and winter that's reducing growth and yields and so on. But having it outright be, say, winter comes in, then winter just kills everything on the planet, kind of thing. Then it kind of boils down into how long are the seasons going to be in that case. So would the seasons be, 3 days, 2 days, 5 days? If you're looking at a life cycle of 4 to 6 weeks on a server, would a quarter of the time be spent in winter season? How would that affect player acquisition, food storage, and all of the other kind of nested things surrounding it? Are the gatherers just going to be completely useless and not have anything to do the entire week? So there's a lot of complicated nested issues in it that may be resolved in kind of gamifying it a lot, and just have reductions, bonuses, perks depending on the kind of the temperature range and the seasonal choice. But it's definitely something that I've been looking at from a design, and I mean, done a bit of investigation into how it could be applicable in Eco. But it would be a cool thing to have, definitely. Winter on northern hemisphere and summer on southern. Yeah, which is also a way to kind of get around it, where you would shift. Like each region would have a summer to winter cycle, and then it would shift and change, and you'd always have summer somewhere, you'd always have winter somewhere, kind of thing. That poses their own kind of problems and conundrums, but yeah, it's definitely something that is being looked at for future improvements and just general experiences. What about adding shovel to the gathering profession? Not a bad idea. I was contemplating whether or not we wanted to add it to self-improvement. Have it, I think it is under here. Yeah, it is falling under modern shovel. But I was leaning towards adding shoveling as a self-improvement, actually gaining experience in self-improvement by shoveling. But it would make sense to have it on gathering as well. seasons should be 20 days, but have a server option on and off and availability to change the number of days. Yeah, that if a feature like that would be implemented, it would have some customization regarding the limitations of it, similar to how food variation and so on are optionable and tweakable. We're looking like that. The advanced masonry is coming along. Advanced cooking is coming along. Can we see interest in their electronics is still not completely filled out. So this is also kind of an interesting way to loop around tooltips and see what's being made where. So if you go in on the specific book, you can also check for where it's being crafted, see how many of these are in the world. You can see the name, see where they belong, and then you can also kind of see what upgrades are in them, as well as what recipes are being queued on them. So if we want to see the electronic skill book, for example, we can see that it's missing the metallurgy advanced papers as well as the metallurgy modern papers. That would be rebar and steel, and then it would be iron copper. Yeah, iron copper. Is level 7 staying the cap, or is there plans to go higher? At the moment, there isn't any plans to increase it further. And the reason for that is mainly related to the quantity of things that goes into it, because people would need to have general reasons to go further up. We have some ideas on adjusting the experience gain and the quantity of experience required for the different professions, so they scale more over time, rather than, as of right now, you can just kind of burn through the larger volume of professions in under a day. Like mining can probably, if you build a sort of a moderate house early on, you can probably do mining skill in like 4 to 6 hours. And the same thing in particular for the gathering professions, which it's generally great for like seeing super quick progression, but it also leaves 0 paths for improvements in it, outside of what you get basically the first day you're playing with that skill. So you don't have kind of something to drive for and something to look forward to on a longer term thing, so say like a week, 2 weeks. And it's part of what we want to adjust and help to have a kind of a smoother curve for it. Is the idea of stars being used for progression in skill levels going to make it as a game mechanic? Yeah. In particular for perks, at least. We'll see how far we expand it. But perks are definitely going to have an investment cost in them. Calm Starry Night here. The industrial puffs of exasperation, filling the environment with pollutants. So if we take a sneak peek into the brick house, we got some furniture, we got some general housing things. So housing is also going to be a big topic for 10.3 later on when probably do the outdoor stream next, I think. It'll fit well with the housing subject. So we have some plans to completely kind of rummage around in housing points, housing values, and the diminishing costs relations to how much you stack in a room, how much furniture you generally need to be able to fill out the points for the equivalent rooms. So it'll be easier to max out a room for that specific tier, but it'll be harder to max out the points in a room scaling up the tier value of the housing material. So you'll have higher points per furniture, but you'll have lower points when you duplicate the furniture, and you're gonna need more modern furniture to kind of get up to max value as you progress through the tech tree as well. So when you're looking at like tier 4, tier 5 housing, you're gonna want to have like the washing machine and like properly geared out kitchen to be able to get as much points as you can. But we'll also be bumping up quite a lot of the general values from the supplementary furniture. So lighting, for example, is going to get an absolutely huge boost. And it's going to be well worth the investment of having that fuel cost early on. That thing is done. So yeah, housing is going to get a pretty significant facelift in 10.3. But I'll go in more on detail on that on when I stream the next time. But it's gonna be interesting. That update is gonna introduce a lot of new cool restrictions and bounds, but it's also gonna introduce a few nifty quality of life things and some significant upgrades to certain parts. Like a whole new crafting UI, which is astronomical. It's been in the works for a while, and we haven't shown off any generals for it, but we'll have that. We'll have that meet the light of day eventually. Yes, new crafting UI is gonna make it. It's gonna make it a lot easier. There's some quality of life features in it. The old hammer button to see variations is also gonna vanish. So it's gonna be. It's probably gonna feel very alien initially, as with all major UI reworks. But it's great. It is absolutely great. Just can't show it off yet because it's going in on develop branch, and develop branch isn't entirely stable enough to do a proper stream on, because there's a lot of things that's shifting around with our new auto system and other aspects. What are my thoughts on the current gathering and building animations? Are we referring to the general limitation in speed in hand gathering and building, or which particular parts of them are you wondering about? Because generally speaking, I want animations for everything, because it looks clean, it looks polished, it feels more interactive, and not having interactions it feels very static, and it just like there's a lack of player reference to it. That said, there's also kind of a border in between what looks really nice, what feels really nice, and what actually works. Which is part of why we temporarily disable the mining mining interaction piece, because we weren't really we pushed out some of it to 10.1, 10.2 playtests, and it got a lot of feedback, some positive, some negative, but we weren't really happy with it ourselves, which is why we disabled it temporarily. So it will make a reappearance, but it won't do that until we're really happy with how it turns out. Because the goal isn't necessarily to limit players, it's to allow a more interactive experience. And part of that is also kind of why we have, you know, 3D interactions for the food consumption and things like that as well. It's just a layer of polish to turn eco into a more finished product. There's also, from a balance perspective in terms of early on resource acquisition, there's also a drive to, a kind of a drive to make things feel like they're improving over the stages of tech progression. So if harvesting has 0 interaction penalties, or, you know, speed reductions and so on, then it's taking away a lot of the big points that building the infrastructure for being able to do like larger scale farming with the steam tractor, for example, would give you. If you can just hand pick in the same speed as the tractor, then why bother with the tractor? The alternative is we'd have to make the tractor so fast it outpaces the hand picking that wouldn't have an animation in that case. So there are some concessions that had to be made in terms of where, like, what the intention is with the thing and how it fits in with the general progression of the game, because we do want the interaction later on to be better than the one you start with. Which is why you have certain tools that just massively improves it. And I know logging is struggling a bit with that late game for larger scale deforestation and forestry actions. But mining is a good example on why we were starting to look into improving that mid-game range with explosives and attachments for the steam track to kind of deal with earlier terraforming at a larger scale earlier on, instead of just pickaxe, skid steer, bam. So from our perspective, we wanted to really introduce something in the middle range that fit with the theme of getting that mechanized era going. And that's why the steam tractor was introduced as well for the farming part of it. We will probably look at something like modern-esque later on to deal with even bigger things. Just need the skid steer to take an attachment for logging or the excavator. Yeah, so we do want to do something with both the excavator and the skid steer in that regard. We want to kind of transform them into being having the same kind of modularity as the steam tractor does. But it's also a lot of work to rewrite those and kind of rejig them to be working in the same capacity, because it is very old assets. And they're kind of set up in a way that isn't cleanly able to just rip it out. So it's gonna take time for someone to kind of dig into it and shop around. But it's definitely something that we want to do with it. But it's once again, it takes time Certain things gets prioritized ahead of that. Some things may not make sense to be prioritizing in some ways, but it's also that's mainly derived from the fact that we have different people working on front end things versus back end things. So our people working on database handling improvements and general game optimizations and so on is not the people that would be working on, say, implementing a new vehicle, as it's two very distinct different skill sets. Even if it's it's the same code, it's the same project, so it's all in C# and the developers are working in the same code structure, but they are distinct different pieces of the code. And the same thing with, we don't want our front end developers to be working on back end optimizations, because it is a lot more technical, it's a lot more heavy duty, and a different skill set. Same way as UI/UX is its own massive beast. And that's why you might see like, hey, this feature is being done, and go like, hey, why aren't you working on fixing optimization? Why are you adding this painting? And that's mainly derived due to the fact that we still want to keep improving and fleshing out and adding content that makes sense, especially when it can be done without impacting or delaying the work on another area, and it just makes sense to add. Which is always hard to convey, but as with any general profession or any people in general, people are going to have different skill set. Can this camera movement be added as AFK screen? Yeah, maybe if it was slightly smoother. I do get some stuttery things, and I'm also getting, as Dennis was talking about, the tree rockets in the background. Seems to be like a loading issue when the chunk renders in, so that'll be something I'll have to take a look at. But yeah, we're coming along here. I think it's taking a little bit longer than what they anticipated, and kind of coming up on 2 hours here. We'll see if they get done during the night. Maybe we can jank someone in. Who do we have in charge of this whole thing that is online and whatnot? Maybe we can sneak one of the GMs in. Pop back in there. Yeah. Yeah, the record camera is quite nice. I haven't hidden the UI because I still want to kind of keep track on the map and see where I am. Switching in between the UI and not is just tedious. I'm not the person for that. Oh. Poor pirate bug being singled out. All the GMs runs away as soon as as soon as like, hey, is anyone wanting to pop in on stream and talk a little bit about the speedrun in its entirety and kind of the 10.0 challenges and anything and everything? He's also less sleep deprived than us others. Do Yeah, let's hop. Let's just hop in here. We do have a guest. Managed to coax one in here. Hey, Williams.
Hello.
Ooh, hang on. We have the Discord's on the speakers. They should be on headphones so you can be heard as well. Is that working? That should be working. Let's try it now.
Hello.
Think that is should be working. It looks like it's working.
Awesome.
Just remembered, would it be an idea to create an earlier version of the brick canals? Possibly. Maybe I can talk to Toby about whether or not we want to do that. Since the functionality for block forms to be acting as a canal is just a watertight attribute that gets added to the specific block form. So I can check in with him if we want to apply that to something. Anyway, yeah. Hey, welcome. Craziness.
Thank you.
This is progressing quite nicely. I see we ran into some issues earlier, but the tree of death thing seems to not be completely killing the server.
Yeah, no, it's been good. We've been making slower progress than we'd hoped, but we've been making consistent progress, I'd say, which is the goal.
Yeah, it's been looking pretty nice. And anyone on stream, let me know if the audio levels are wonky up and down. Just give a shout if they're off. Is White Cheetah new? Familiar with White Tiger? It is a speedrun event server that is running on during the weekend here. So they had the start meteor is 72 hours, and we are what are we? 26 hours in? 25 or and a half something?
Yeah, we depends how you count crashes.
Oh, just plain in game time, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, we're about 25, 26 hours.
Speedrunning in eco is an interesting concept. Love the effort and love the energy everyone is having. But it is a peculiar area of investment.
Yeah. Yeah, the game is definitely not designed to be speedrun, so it's a unique challenge to try and get around some of the game balancing that's gone into eco, especially with all the recent changes since the last time we did it.
Yeah, the 10.0 versus 9. Are you feeling that it seems like you're running it faster, but is that just because of smoother setup, or is it just crazy time investment going on right now?
I mean, it's just a completely different pacing, mostly because of the way the upgrade modules work. So I feel like last time we did this, it was a lot of waiting for levels to get hit, for each of the different upgrade modules to go, and so I feel like there was a lot more just kind of standing around waiting, or we'd be preparing for the next skill, but it was a lot of locked progression.
Right.
This time around, it seems like we're always having multiple things going on at the same time, so it feels more productive that way. But at the same time, there's a lot more that goes into each thing, and so uh, it's taking a little bit longer, even though we're doing more things.
Oh yeah, and yeah, don't Narc points out that don't forget the later start time for the EU, for the EU. So yeah, you started at 6 p.m., which was a
Yeah,
better EU time.
we started 3 hours later than the last time we did this, and sleep schedules has definitely factored into this run quite a bit more than last time. We the early game takes a little bit more to get going, um, because there's a lot more skills that are needed. Last time we didn't even really touch, farming, gathering, milling, fertilizers, like those types of things. So having those go into the early game means it's a little bit lower paced at the beginning, and then faster paced kind of later on, I think. But because of that, that shifted a lot of the time where we needed to actually have a lot of people online into the spot where a lot of people were sleeping, I think.
Right. So all in all, a generally more skill inclusive speedrun compared to previous ones.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's been way more times this time around where we have to interact with other groups. I feel like last time we kind of had each, we have wood group, rock group, food group, tech group, and kind of each of those groups kind of did their own thing for the most part. This time around, there's way more interactions between the different groups, because of just the different skills that feed into each other. Um, which has definitely added to the challenge.
Catfish, I have stabbed no one yet. The ongoing gag with her and White Tiger.
Yeah.
You see, housing really got bumped up here. The bio.
Yeah, we started off not really having much housing because as we said, it was a lot more level gated the first time
Yeah,
we did the run, whereas a lot of the early game skills here don't need levels to kind of reach the next progression level. So housing wasn't as mandatory. So we kind of waited to where leveling was a lot more important, and just made higher tier housing once we got to that point.
yeah. I talked about that a little bit just prior here with um, kind of experience required for the early on skills is just so low compared to the later tech skills. And it's probably something that will change, um, just to kind of smoothen out when you unlock things, or the general kind of you lack a thing to look forward to, and kind of a miniature goal of your profession to kind of reach the next stage, and that feels like it takes away a lot of the initiative to keep going and keep playing in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel like I've been on some other servers where, if you have enough stars, to spend, it's really easy to get a couple different skills at the start and kind of get ahead of other people, because it's just so easy to unlock the skills early on.
Yeah, it's also that has been a very very tricky thing for me on balance side things. Like some were pointing out that, hey, why is the clay molds not being made by Potter? And the issue boils down into it's very hard. It's very easy to granulate the skills and make them crossed over into different ones, but it's harder to do that when you need like intermediary ingredients that would make sense in them. Is also would also make sense to be made by a later profession, which
Yeah.
which then runs into the circle of like, why is this not doing XYZ? Well, then that would have to be like a tier 1 profession, and then suddenly you have 75% of the professions in tier 1 because you need to have access to all of them immediately because of intermediary requirements.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually like the gathering, getting that, the craft that you get that's
Yeah, how
needed
has
long
that
term.
the I did some minor mold changes just prior to it. You got the 10.22 update just prior to the speedrun
Hmm.
start. Um,
I feel like the molds have actually felt really good. We've had we had more gatherers than most other professions, just because it was so important to us to have that gathering perk on getting as many crops as we could out of the world. So it's really easy for us to have a gatherer go and queue things up, I think. Um, and you know, being in the jungle, we get clay really easily. So I think it's been pretty easy for us to stay on top of the molds, and you know, gives something for the gatherers and potters to do.
Yeah, it's keeping them engaged throughout, so they just don't get neglected halfway through because the food bins are all filled and they no longer have a sensible place to do things.
Yeah.
That Jaeger is still roaming around there, just making sure no squatters shows up, I guess.
Yeah, we've definitely had people poking around that aren't in voice chat that we've had a couple people that have been super helpful, engaged, you know, helping quite a bit, taking key skills and stuff. And then we have had some people though that come in and start poking around for things that we had planned to be used in other places, and so we've kind of had to adapt with that.
Yeah, that has been a very interesting approach as well for the general speedruns. Is anyone generally not aware of it? So White Cheetah is a speedrun event server, but in normal cases of explicit speedruns and so on, they tend to be very very hard lined in what's being crafted, what times, in what quantities, and so on and so forth, as well as the general people that are involved in it, and everyone's kind of accounted for and so on. But this server is completely open to the public, so anyone can join in and help out if they want. But
Yeah,
if you do hop in, be mindful of nabbing a full stack of something that you might not be purposely have access to, and then absorbed into something completely different than what it was intended for. Specifically, like critical research stuff is just very exposed in that manner. But it's
yeah,
open for everyone, really.
which is actually really helpful. I mean, having so many people makes a lot of things really a lot easier. That, you know, if you only had a dozen of your friends, would take so much longer to try and get anything done. You know, even if you had more control on the situation, you just don't have enough manpower.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about in the beginning, where looking at the metrics for the playtest and seeing like, hey, you completed it within 32 hours. So that's definitely too short. Let's just multiply all the consumption requirements by like 10 times, because it's supposed to take a week, which would be a very unfair metric to use, because you need to look at the complete set of hours spent by individual players to get the full time span for it.
Yeah,
And having
I'll be
these,
interested to see the final playtime, because it almost feels to me like we've had less people this time than last time, but that might just be because we're spread more thin between the different professions, and you feel that a little bit more.
yeah, definitely, uh, we'll post stuff surrounding it when it gets when it's completed, and I might compile a little bit on general data on my end, for stuff in particular like housing, time length, and playtime and so on, to see kind of where things happen and in which order. So that'll be fun. And like I said, this
Yeah.
is this whole thing is just super helpful for everyone involved, and you even managed to find critical breaking bugs in the process as well that seem to have escaped everyone else. So,
Yeah.
super good job on that.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see what we didn't think was going to be challenges that were, and things that we thought might be challenges that weren't. So um, hopefully that kind of feedback is helpful.
Absolutely. And like I said, when compiling the playtime, etc., we can also kind of dive into like how much time it was played by certain professions as well. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
and Anna
Yeah.
Witchman points out huckleberry extracts being the hard limit for the advanced upgrades, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a which part is the fertilizer papers?
Yeah. The fertilizer papers are far and away the most uh, involved paper. Just they pull so many things, and the 200 crops. It used to be pretty easy to get 200 crops, I think, and then just with when you're trying to speed run something,
Yeah, you don't
you
have the
just
time and luxury to farm plant.
yeah, you can't scale up um, crops, and so trying to get the huckleberry extract for the fertilizers, trying to get we thought that maybe the pelts or the leather could be an issue if we didn't have enough people hunting early on, but that wasn't an issue at all. So it's mostly just getting the crops and getting the huckleberry extract. Um,
There's still quite a lot of mushrooms, as well as a lot of taro roots.
yeah, I think we got most of the stuff close by, and then it's just the logistical issue of getting a bunch of the mushrooms or the things that are further away.
Get a
I wasn't really part of the gathering, so I don't know what exactly went into that, but
narc with after this run. I hope to never see a fish again. um,
yeah, we were living off charred fish early on.
yeah. No, but it's been an absolute pleasure to just kind of rummage around and take a peek at see where things are being done, what's being used. The excessive windowed use is definitely an interesting tactic. Um, I'm not particularly fond of massive gapped houses just because it just looks wonky. Um,
Yeah, we definitely save on a lot of resources that way, but then you also don't get lavish. But most of us aren't hitting level 6 anyways, so we're not
yeah,
really too concerned with lavish.
a nerf coming. On that topic, the general, there is a plan and it'll happen eventually. So for servers that are interested in it, um, some people have seen on White Tiger, for example, we have a hard requirement of you cannot have any gaps in your building, and that is a simple server boolean, so a server true false statement in one of the configs. I think it's the difficulty config. I can't remember exactly where it is. Um, but you can switch that around. You can also specify how many blocks of building material allows you to place or have a gap in it. So I think it's 10 blocks per gap by default. So for every 10 reinforced concrete, for example, in this house, allows you one extra window. So if you have a house of 100 blocks, you'd have 10 free spacings. And the main reason we haven't turned that on by default is because we want it's mainly surrounding storefronts that's an issue. But we may have a solution coming for that in the future. So that might be something to need to take into consideration for the next run. Because that might
Yeah,
that might have shifted around until then.
yeah. From a more casual player, I'm super excited to see that type of change. But it's definitely from the speedrun side of things, makes everything a little bit more. You need more materials for everything.
Yeah, the decay and a lot of the other aspects are definitely gonna throw some wrenches in the machinery for it.
Oh yeah,
Um,
because the decay will scale off of usage, I imagine, and not
yeah,
just
yeah,
time.
yeah. So
So with the speed, you run through stuff a lot quicker.
so decay have a few variables for it. One being time in use, kind of thing. So as you're churning away and the machinery is being used, it'll constantly kind of eat at that durability part.
Hmm.
But you also have a dynamic component to it where we can specify if a recipe has a higher degree of consumption than just the base value. So you could have certain pieces and certain parts that are costing more to kind of eating more of that durability part when it's in use.
Oh, cool.
So there are some scalable values in there that we can use. We're just trying to kind of look over how to best present that information to the user in through the recipe list or like in the crafting order.
Yeah.
But that'll definitely be interesting to see what happens, and a large part of that durability decay and everything is going to be coming in 10.3 as well. So look forward to that. But yeah, I think I'm gonna, like 2.5 hours now. I think I'm gonna start heading off. Thank you so much for hopping in and gracing us and kind of talking a little bit about how, what, when, and so on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for all the work you put into the game. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thank you. And for anyone wondering who you are, it's 96 Williams on Discord, one of our volunteer GMs. Frequent flyer on White Tiger.
Yep.
And yeah, thank you so much for coming, and probably call good night on the stream, and hope everyone has a continued great weekend and Saturday evening, night here. So yeah, thank you very much, and I will see you all on the next stream, which will be, it'll be in 3 weeks because I'll be away during the time of the usual bi-weekly thing. So yeah, keep track on news and information on the Discord as usual, and catch you on the next one.